Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Kimberly Olson. I'm here to talk with you today about the difference between empaths and a covert, or also known as vulnerable narcissist. The term empath, by the way, doesn't come from actual psychology. I mean, not of the university variety, of the journal or schooled variety. The term empath I really saw coming up like in the last 10 years in particular. And where I see it mostly is in social media. And it's become sort of this real sort of self-described concept, but to the extent that the word is recognized. Well, empath, I would imagine, comes originally from this idea that therapists, sensitive people tend to be highly empathic. Okay, that term's been around forever, and it's been associated with people like therapists, counselors, things like that for eons. But the term empathic means a willingness to assume the perspective of another. Okay, so when I'm listening to you and the struggles that are going on for you, I am imagining or feeling what it must have been like to have been you in those conditions with your perceptions. I'm not imagining what it would be like to be me in those circumstances. Okay, so really, empath is an empathic person, again, is somebody who is really very much trying to understand the world through the perspective of another. And so there are people who are highly empathic that get it really, really quick. But here's what I'm seeing. It started off fair enough on Facebook. And then I started seeing things like, I'm an empath. I can read the energy in the room. I know when you're full of it. And all these sort of, I don't know, snotty kinds of statements. And those were not empathic remarks. What you're saying is that you can read experiences and people through your own filter. So if you don't especially like a person, okay, the experiences that you read from that person may have nothing to do with that other person and everything to do with you. Okay. And in which case, you're very sensitive to your own feelings and your own perspective, which is quite different than being sensitive to the perspective of others. So I went on a school of the internet, okay, to find the empath stuff, because that's where you can find it. I found this stuff on vulnerable and covert narcissists, actually in psych journals. So here's what an empath is described as: sensitive, fair enough. Okay, somebody who's truly empathic is very sensitive. They're very much able to sort of feel with another human being, whereas in sympathy, you're feeling for someone, an empath feels with someone. Okay, they definitely need to isolate to regroup. Okay, because when you're taking in other people's stuff, assuming their perspective, helping them heal, it's exhaustive, or it can be. Okay, so if I'm back-to-back clients in a day, absolutely, I'm going to need some time to recharge and reboot. They don't tend to like crowds. Okay, again, they get replenished in solitude. Okay, when you go back to sort of the Myers-Briggs and introverts versus extroverts, extroverts get fed by social relationships. Introverts get fed in solitude. Okay, so oftentimes I always think of it as like needing to recharge your batteries. Okay, they tend to struggle with boundaries, which makes sense because a lot of people became empathic by having had a lot of really difficult experiences themselves and not feeling like somebody else was there for them, and therefore feeling very much obligated to be there for others. And so it's not uncommon for empaths to stretch themselves really, really thin, with good motives, good intentions, but not really understanding that you can't get water from a dry well. Okay, so that's why folks that tend to be empathic have to really watch their boundaries and have good intuition. Probably the case. Okay, again, people who are genuinely empathic have been listening for so long, reading other people for so long, that their working hypotheses or their guesses about people are usually pretty spot on. Okay. So, how is that different from a covert or a vulnerable narcissist? Well, the covert or vulnerable narcissist is also very sensitive. Okay. They, in fact, might be one of those people that says, I can read the energy in the room. There's something different about you. And of course, the part that they're not acknowledging is that they're reading this person through their own experiences of this person. So let me give you an example. If you don't like somebody, okay, you're much more likely to pick up on things about that person that are disagreeable. Okay, that doesn't make you an empath. It means you don't like that person. It means that you are filtering information about this person through your preconceived notion of them. Okay, that's not the same thing as being empathic. Being empathic is trying to see the world through the other person's perspective, not through yours. Not through assuming that you know what other people are really doing or experiencing, or you're smarter than thou, or any of that silliness. Okay. That's not empathic. That's narcissistic. Okay. They too need to isolate because, again, they're sort of hyper vigilant to any perceived criticism. So, especially if they're feeling inferior, which they do a lot of the time, people could simply be sharing about their own successes and they're going to get intimidated by that and decide that that other person has ulterior motives for sharing these things, when in fact it's just their own insecurity that's been triggered. So they don't like to be with groups. In fact, they really struggle in social situations. They tend to struggle with boundaries as well. Okay, we've all heard of narcissistic supply and needing sort of that walking cheerleading section. And if you don't agree with me, then it's easier for me to cut you off than it is to deal with the fact that I might be wrong. Okay. So their boundaries are really interesting in that it's kind of an all or nothing construct. They do lots of positive things for other people, just like an empath does. But it's about your motives for doing those positive things. So if you're doing something because you genuinely want to be kind and give to another human being, okay, first of all, there's some signs of that. Is the gift that you're giving the other person something they really want, or is it something that you want to give? Do you get the difference? Okay. I'm not suggesting that you cannot give other people things that you want to give for the sake of giving those things. But if we're really talking about doing something for somebody else, is it about you or is it about them? Okay. So that is a way you can sort of tease that apart. And for the narcissist, it's one of the ways that they help to maintain that self-image. Everybody wants to believe that they're a good person, right? And especially if you have insecurities about that, it wouldn't be uncommon at all to do things to try and overtly demonstrate your generosity, benevolence, things like that, that may or may not be sincere. And you may not know whether or not they're sincere. Okay. And both groups, by the way, love animals. Now, I thought that was interesting too. Now, for the empath, I think that there is a lot of solace with animals, with our puppies in particular, who give that unconditional love. And when you get to know them, you can look in their eyes and kind of sense what's going on, and that's part of what makes you empathic. For the covert narcissists, their animals are really important for love too. Okay, but it's love without any demands. Okay, so our puppies don't really have a lot of things they demand or expect for us in return. So it's very, very easy to love a puppy. Whereas people have their own voice, their own opinion, that kind of stuff. So it makes it much more difficult, especially if you're very sort of hyper vigilant to anybody who disagrees with you. Okay. So what I'd like to do can we return to just saying empathic if somebody's empathic rather than the label? Because again, if you're seeing posts out there that suggest that this person is somehow special and above other people because they can read other people and do these things, that's not empathic. It's not what an empath would say. That wouldn't be their perspective at all. Okay. And then, of course, the covert narcissist has the need, of course, to feel special, to compensate for deep feelings of inferiority, which that's another video in and of itself. But just keep in mind that I think all human beings have a desire to be wanted and to feel special and to feel important in the world. I'm not necessarily sure that we need to be doing that through labels. Okay. If you need to label yourself an empath in order to feel like you're something or somebody, we got bigger fish to fry. You got bigger issues that we need to be talking about. Okay. Be loving, be sensitive, be kind, but I'm not sure that the designation is really necessary because, again, it sort of flies in the face of what an empathic person would believe. So just give it some thought. And I'm not like taking a shot at people who have a lot of empathy for people. I would be one of them. I just want to really be mindful of this idea that we're doing things that are consistent with empathy, as opposed to things that are more consistent with vulnerable narcissism. Thanks, you guys.